So, I mean, I think your first thing is that the financial industry is far broader than it has ever been. So, like, I think whereas, in years gone by, what people meant by the financial industry was probably quite specific, and so you could probably apply a set of rules to, okay, well, this is what strong brands look like in the financial industry. I think as the financial industry has evolved and spread and turned into a range of core services and affiliated industries and services, I think the differences in what makes a strong brand in each of those sectors are quite apparent. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm hesitant to say there are set rules for strong brands in financial services, because financial services stretches from everything from Barclays Bank to Apple Pay to my firm, to RegTech to any of to any of a number of sort of quite specific different fields within financial markets. And I think what makes a strong brand in those different areas is quite different. What I would say, and this is where I was sitting down with one of our agencies the other day, and we were talking about our own brand, and I think when financial services companies are considering their brand, and I mean when any company is considering their brand, there's an important decision to make between what rules of your industry you want to follow, and then what rules you want to break. And basically, and that way of approaching branding, I think, is important across a number of industries. Is important whenever you're approaching branding, but particularly in financial markets, because there are such there are generally conservative brands in financial markets, and everyone follows quite similar branding templates, and everyone has similar color palettes, and that's because of a desire to generally fit in. And that's sort of the point of which rules do you want to follow so that you look like you belong in an industry. But then I think the point of the conversation I was having with our branding industry, with our branding agency, was, that's great, and you absolutely have to work out how you can look and feel like a company that fits in that space. So when someone is looking for a solution in your area, whether that's asset management, banking, wealth management, FinTech, you appear like a brand that makes sense there. However, really then zero in on which of the rules you want to break, so that as well as fitting into an industry, you stand out. So find those, make them authentic to your brand, make sure you're making decisions not based on, well, we're just doing this because it's different. Make them authentic to what your brand's about, but really leverage those. And that's something, to be honest, we're, as like I said, I've only been at Demica for a few months, but that's something we're really zeroing in on in terms of our brand's evolution. Is we don't want to fundamentally change anything really about how we appear as a brand, but we do want to consider which of those rules and which of those things about our brand which we really want to make us stand out from the industry and stand out from our competitors.
Interesting. Do you have any leads on that, like you could share with us? Or
I think basically it comes back to, and I suppose it comes back to my point about being authentic. So our brand platform, our why, if you want, Simon Sinek's sort of start with why, is to unlock potential. So like I said, we're a business that basically helps corporates unlock capital, essentially, which is currently locked up in their invoices. So our start with why, our purpose, our brand statement is that we can help you unlock potential. And that's why we get up every day. That's why we go to work. That's why we do what we do. The how we do what we do is by transforming working capital. And what we're trying to do at the moment is develop some sort of messaging framework or some sort of ladder which says, okay, well, if that's our how and our why, how do we apply that in a way that makes our brand stand out? And I don't just mean, what does that mean in terms of some copy on an advert? I mean, what are the things that we're going to make really distinctive about our brand to say, well, if we believe that, there's all this latent potential waiting to be unlocked in corporate organizations, what does that mean about how we speak about our business, how we appear on our website? What does that mean? How does that make us different from the other competitors in our market? I'm sort of talking about this because this is a process we're going through, and I don't think we have the answers, but we've certainly started to ask, I think, some of the right questions. And that's I think, coming back to your original question of what can financial markets brands do, financial services brands do to build strong brands. I think your baseline is build something which looks like you fit in. Your real thing that's going to make you successful, go from good to great, is what's going to make you stand out. And that's your difference that you need to switch on. And it's not, it's not, like I said, it's not a simple process. It's not easy because it's got to feel authentic and real to who you are. But if you get it right, it can be, incredibly powerful.
I love this. Thank you so much. It's really interesting the way you kind of put together that, because it's true that it's actually leads me to a question I want to ask you too. It's true that it's an industry where things tend to move slow because you have and needs to be structured because you have so much compliance, right? I mean, tell me if I'm mistaken, but that's the kind of vision I have from outside. And so the question I wanted to ask is, as marketers today, you have so much tools, data, ways to test ideas, to move faster than than you could ever do before, because of digital, basically, and because of what you can do with it. But how does that translate in the financial industry? Do you feel like you can move fast, you can test things, and have that kind of iteration process, or is it still very complicated to move around and you need to comply with so many things, you need to make things go through so many people? Like, what's your feeling about this?
I mean, it's a good question. I think there's a few parts, because there's the part about data, which I'd love to talk about, and I'll sort of give you my download on that in a second. But I think the second part, which you asked about around, going through processes and getting things done, my personal experience is that's less a facet of the industry you work in. And really, the biggest correlation that I've found is in terms of the size of the organization you work for. And like, I'm saying that, I'm speaking as someone who has literally, a few months ago made the jump from 16,000 people to 200 people. And I think I have been, really pleased. And, part of the reason for my move was the ability to get stuff done, the ability to go from ideation to planning to execution to analysis at just a fraction of the time that it takes within a large corporate organization. And I've got a few things that we're working on at the moment that I'm really genuinely excited by. And I think that's just so much harder in a big corporate organization. And listen, there are lots of benefits to working in that big corporate organization, and I think I would, if I was going to sort of give a piece of advice to people earlier on in their marketing career, I would say a bit of both. You learn a huge amount sort of experiencing both sorts. But I think in terms of what you're talking about, of like, are there limits on execution, and do things take longer? That scale and that size inevitably does just slow things down. To sort of come back to your point about data, I think, I sort of take that as a slightly separate point, because, yeah, you're right. There is so much data. available to marketers now, to businesses generally, I think my view on that is you have to be really careful with data, because there is so much there's so much data available, there is a tendency to measure for measurement's sake. And even moving to my small organization I'm at now, predominantly staffed by former bankers, so you can imagine they like a spreadsheet. Like it's that there is sometimes a focus on data while losing a focus on what are the end outcomes you're actually trying to drive, and does the data you're collecting help you understand the progress you're making towards those outcomes. So like, I've heard a number of good analogies. I think you mentioned you'd read one or two of my blogs, I think, and one of them I talked about data, and I said, there's a danger, like, the way I heard it, I like it, the way that a drunk person uses a lamppost for support rather than illumination. And there is a tendency sometimes in business to say, well, we did this thing and it was good, here's the data to show it, as opposed to using the data to continually check your progress against your stated objectives and understand whether you need to course correct. And I think to do that, you have to just be really dead set on what is the end outcome you're trying to drive, like your annual, your full year goal, your full year target. Is that number of leads, number of opportunities? Is that revenue growth? Is that increase in brand awareness scores? Whatever. And then build back from that, sort of reverse back down the track and go, well, if I need to get to this data point at the end of the year, what are all the other data points I need to get to before that? And then you measure against that, and then you find yourself measuring the things that matter, because they're supportive of the end goal you're trying to get to, and you find yourself adapting, right? You find yourself saying, well, actually, we know that in order to get to our full year goal by end of Q1, we wanted to have hit X, Y, and Z targets in these different areas. We haven't. So why has that happened, and what can we learn from it, and how do we need to adapt for Q2? So like, I love data, and I think by marketing standards, I'm probably relatively more of the sort of analytical end of the spectrum rather than the creative end. But I think you just have to be really careful and make sure that the data that you're using is helping you achieve the end goal that you've set yourself.